All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I've got Luke with me, and we're going to be discussing the objectosphere and things that go on, and questions, and Trump and trade. And Luke, introduce yourself a little bit, and we'll get rolling here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name's Luke Skinner. I have I host a show called Hardly Strictly Politics. You can find us on SoundCloud if you search Zero Gravity Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Lucifer Skinner. That's Lukefahr. Last name Skinner. And yeah, I've been in the objectivist game for I don't know a few years now, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. And I saw a video that you did recently, Brandon, that where you were discussing the alt-right, and I think you actually received a fair bit of criticism over some of that. And anyways, just in the comments, and then I saw Rucka's video that he did as well, so that's why I reached out to you. I was like, dude, we need to clear the air on what the alt-right is. So I thought that would be a good launching point for today's conversation.
Okay, and just to put my view of where I am on it, I have asked the Objectosphere on Facebook, and they say Candace Owens is on the alt-right, Larry Elder is on the alt-right, Kanye West is on the alt-right, and a couple of comic book characters apparently are also on the alt-right that are black. So there is some common knowledge that there are black people on the alt-right.
Yeah.
So I see it as a very messy term. I think it's an anti-concept at this point. I think it's a smear of some kind.
Yeah,
and you're
the media
gonna
certainly. What's up?
you're gonna say that it's from Richard Spencer. That's the source of it, I believe. And he's a leftist, collectivist, racist, as far as ideologically, as far as I can see. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead and give your spiel.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the idea that all those people that you named are on the alt-right, that is patently absurd. In Ruckus, Ruckus accused you of being a boomer on the subject, and what he means, you've got a boomer tier understanding of what the alt-right is, and that's fine. That's what we're here today for. The alt-right, if you want to really, the genesis of the alt-right, if you really want to identify it as being a moment in time, was right around episode 30 of a podcast called TDS. It used to be called The Daily Shoah. And it's on a website called therightstuff.biz. And this is really important because to mention this, because a few years ago when I was new to objectivism, I was really thirsty for objectivist content, and so I've watched like everything Yarnbrook ever did up until about, I would say, a year or two ago, just because you kind of start to hear in his talks and things, what he's going to say. So in any case, I had watched everything, and one of the things that he always talked about libertarians is that it's a failed movement because they lack a philosophical foundation. And back then, I was kind of, one of these people where it's like, yeah, but they're fellow travelers. Why do we have to push on? And there was a lot of things, a lot of context that I was missing as well, the whole history with Rothbard and everything. And so I was, kind of in this camp of, but they're fellow travelers. We more or less agree on most of the same things. Why do you have to be this forward and aggressive and just write it off as a failed movement because it lacks a philosophical foundation? And the important thing to understand here is that the product of that understanding is the alt-right. That is what the alt-right is.
Wait, so we didn't go in and fix it as objectivists, and therefore the alt-right has developed, or what? I didn't exactly follow you. The product of what is the alt-right?
The product of libertarianism lacking a philosophical foundation is the alt-right.
So I did follow you.
Yeah, so what the alt-right is a bunch of libertarians who they became bored. And by bored, I mean they became philosophically bored. They hit a brick wall with Rothbard. They all were anarcho-capitalists. Some of them even read Rand, like Chris Cantwell. You might remember him from the documentary that was made about Charlottesville. I know he's read a bunch of Rand. I know that one of the hosts of TDS has read a bunch of Rand, at least one, if not two. They clearly did not get objectivism. They didn't get it. They didn't get far enough into it. But they just became bored and they started a podcast. And over the course of the first 30 episodes, you begin to see the alt-right ideology begin to develop. Now, it's true that prior to this, Richard Spencer coined the term alt-right. He bought the domain bought the domain for it, coined the term. He had his own thing going, but the thrust of the movement, qua being an ideology, the thrust of the movement was this scene around 2014, 2015 of this podcast, TDS. I've listened to probably 80 episodes of it, because sometimes they were kind of funny. Like, I mean, you have to hand it to them, because they're getting all these memes and stuff from 4chan and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, the things that they say are utterly and absolutely contemptible, but you have to hand it to them for successfully building a movement using this kind of internet humor. And this is why when Rucka, accused you of being a boomer on the subject, he's actually kind of borrowing that from that movement, because this is something that they do is they like to play little games between, the generational differences and, how boomers are always typing in all caps on Facebook and whatnot and not using any punctuation, kind of making fun of this and kind of being, sort of innocently, unaware of certain movements on the internet and things like this. So that's what
I was wondering how much of that criticism, you're such a boomer, how much of that is like CNN propaganda or young media propaganda against? Is it just a smear against older people?
Yeah, it's just a funny little term that people use to to say somebody's a boomer on a subject. Is to it's just a funny little thing that people say to sort of accuse somebody of being blissfully ignorant on something.
Yeah, Rucka said I'm so 2016 on this.
Yeah. I mean, you are, but I also don't think that you deserved the extent of the criticism that you did, because anybody that criticizes somebody in the way that Rucka did to you by making that video, which the most contemptible thing about that video that pissed me off the most is the fact that song is stuck in my head now. Objectivism is not a canned philosophy. It is a philosophy of process. And when you get something wrong, it could be either a content issue. In other words, you just simply didn't understand something, or it's a more process-related issue. In other words, like you're dishonest or something like this. So, I mean, this is not like the end of the world or something that you didn't understand this. I don't know why going after you in such an aggressive way that everybody did in the comment sections and whatnot. I don't think that you really deserved that, because it's just a content thing. This doesn't make you like a bad objectivist or something like this.
Well,
it's totally ridiculous.
I think there are some objectivists who think that I'm distancing myself from the Ayn Rand Institute and the main movement, and they are distancing themselves from me. I think Rucka, I appeared with him, so now he wants to make sure everybody knows that he's not with me. He's going to make fun of me publicly and stuff. So now, honestly, that's a leftist tactic, and that shit's not going to fly as long as I'm alive. So
yeah,
I'm not going to go start my own website or something. What I will do is I'm going to post every single day when you're on Brooke Says Something Stupid. I'm going to post a video about it, and I'll outnumber them with videos if that's what it takes to get my message out there, that their message is I thought the one place in the world that would be free of communist infiltration would be the Ayn Rand Institute, and it turns out I was wrong. They got in there too. So
yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't. I've never, when I first learned about objectivism, I had one friend in real life that was an objectivist. I knew one guy, and the first thing he told me was, "Stay off the forums." That's the first thing he said. He was like, the people on the forums are nuts. And he's like, just don't go to them for advice or questions. And that kind of like sent me down a path where I never got involved in the community, the objectivist community. I've been doing it solo on my own thinking about it on my own, drawing my own conclusions, all for for like 5, 6, 7 years now, and and it's just been recently that all this stuff on YouTube has occurred. I was actually really bummed when Two and Rucka split up, because those like long 6 hour long format, that format was really fun to just kind of put on and listen to while I'm barbecuing and whatnot. Um, and it was just kind of like two buddies over there having an intellectual conversation while I'm barbecuing. I loved that format. Um, so I was pretty bummed to see that go away. And and it's this sort of drama, this e-drama, and this is not unique to objectivism. I mean, this happens everywhere. It happens. There's another movement called the alt-right, and you see it happening between the alt-right and the alt-right. Where the alt-right calls the alt-right, "Oh, you're a bunch of cucks," and blah blah blah. And the alt-right is like, "Oh yeah, well, you want like Auschwitz now." You know what I mean? So they go back and forth. Then there's these falling out. I mean, this is just it's all over the place. This is not unique to objectivism, but I try to avoid the drama. I don't like it. I'm a happy person. I have a good life. I don't even want to go near it in any way.
Yeah, I stayed away from it for a long time. I had all these guys on Facebook sending me stuff saying, the Ayn Rand Institute spreading garbage. The Ayn Rand Institute spreading traitorous nonsense. They're vile pigs. And I was like, all right, you guys are out of control. I don't know who you people are.
There's like some website like ariwatch.com or something like this. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sent the way of these people a lot. And of course, if there is any kind of schism in objectivism, I'm not going to go over with some group of racists or something. So I think that's what Ruck is distancing himself. He's like, well, if he's not with the Ayn Rand Institute, then who knows what kind of insanity he's off onto.
Yeah.
And that's what upsets me about it. Some people use the Ayn Rand Institute as their way to think about things, and like, we've got to make sure that our house is in order. We can't have nonsense being spread by the House of Rand, sort of.
Yeah. I mean, this is why objectivism became as personal as it did for me. It was when it was ironically, like, I knew all about the alt-right, everything that which we haven't even gotten into this part yet, but everything that they stand for and who they are and what they believe. And I hear Yaron Brook's show on the alt-right, and I generally like Brook. I don't want to be like anti-Yaron Brook or anything. I've met him. He's very nice, and I have him he brought me into the objectivist fold, and he is really good for that sort of thing. But when I heard that, just how wrong he got that, I was like, you know what? Like, I really need to do a lot more thinking on my own, drawing my own conclusions about reality and things like this. And so this is why I think a lot of objectivists are just sort of adrift at sea right now, because nobody really knows who to look to, for this kind of content, right now.
And they don't want to look to the people who are saying open the borders and let as many immigrants come as want to. They don't like that. I think a lot of objectivists are like, can't we protect our borders? Isn't this a little insane here? Like, look at Europe. Can't we protect our borders? Isn't there some selfish way to go about protecting our borders? Wouldn't Ayn Rand's philosophy be in favor of preserving your life and your freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the way I think about the border issue is that, what are we if not a nation of laws? And you just need to enforce them. This is not rocket science. Like, enforce the laws. The one role of the government that we can all agree on is enforce the laws, right? We can talk about what the laws are, whether those laws are just, whether they're not. But what we can't talk about, what's not up for discussion, is, do we enforce the laws?
Yeah.
And now, I'm sure that there's some nuance there. If they pass a law saying, like, kill all people of a certain group, then obviously we should oppose that.
But we have civil disobedience in the history of our nation, in the history of our national discourse. We have the whole tradition of civil disobedience. So we've sort of already got that covered. If there's an egregious law, then we don't, then we disobey it.
Yeah, for sure, as we should. But I mean, I don't think that having borders is egregious. You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And did you see my video where I did find Ayn Rand's endorsement of open borders? Did you see that?
I saw that. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, though.
Well, let me just give you, it's real quick and easy. She says any country has a right to invade Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany. They have no right to border integrity. So there's open borders for two countries at least, Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany. So how bad do you have to be on Ayn Rand's open border list so far?
Yeah.
She endorsed. She said any country can go into those two countries. Now, did she say that Soviet Russia has a right to send 1 million people to America?
Yeah. No. But are people like drawing this, like the fact that she said this? Are they using that to justify open borders in America?
No, she said someone asked her about immigration in a question at Ford Hall Forum once, and she said, "How could I be against immigration when I wouldn't be alive today if I were?"
Right.
So they're using that to justify open borders.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she went on and said, you can't use the law to make your life better. You have to make your life better through competition.
Right.
And my question is, competition with who? I would like to have a little area of the earth where me and a group of people agree on a certain number of things. I don't want to be in competition with all 7 billion of them. I would like to have a little circled off area with maybe a wall around it or something. That's what I think. And people have built walls throughout history, city walls in Athens and stuff. I mean, come on, let's have a damn wall already.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not interested in competing with somebody who's not interested in following the rules of the game.
Right.
You know, so this is when we talk about people who fundamentally hate America and what it stands for. They hate the West and want to do damage to the West. You know, I'm not interested in having those people able to freely cross into the United States to harm innocent lives.
Yeah, it's insane.
I struggle to understand how we're even at a point where we have to discuss the merits of this.
But not only should we let them in, we should apologize to them for ever trying to keep them out, according to the piece by Harry Binswanger.
Yeah, which I haven't read that piece, but I'm aware of it. It almost seems too painful to read, but which sucks because I like Harry Binswanger as well.
Yeah,
I've been recently watching their debate with Christopher Hitchens that I think you maybe posted on Facebook. But anyways, yeah, we should probably go back to the alt-right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's figure that out.
So right around like episode 30 of this show. So like the first 30 episodes, they were just kind of, you know, again, adrift at sea, libertarians adrift at sea, bored with philosophy because they never really got objectivism, and Rothbard totally failed them. And I remember one specific moment on one of the episodes. One of the guys says, yeah, when I was reading about Rothbard's explanation of the rights of children, he was like, he was like, it was so irrational. He was like, that's when I knew that libertarianism was a failed, you know, attempt at explaining things like liberty and freedom and things like this. And right around then, about episode 30, they read a book called Culture of Critique by Kevin MacDonald. He was I think a psychology professor at UCSD, I believe. And he wrote a book called Culture of Critique, and his whole shtick in this book was that, you know, there's this big Jewish conspiracy to take over the world, and I mean, we'll get to this in a minute, but basically, it's the Jewish question. And long story short, basically justifying using evolutionary psychology to justify anti-Semitism. And so they'll, over the course of many episodes, we're talking weeks, a couple of years, the ideology of the alt-right became essentially three pillars. There's a fundamental difference between men and women, and the intellectual content for this comes from there's so many pieces here. There's another sort of like arm of the internet called PUA, pickup artistry. And this is actually, I think that they were the ones that really started using the term red pilling first. So like the first red pill that I'm aware of, and when I say that, I mean the first time anybody used that term to describe some sort of truth, some hidden truth, was with respect to the differences between men and women, and that you have to accept that as being a fact of reality. That is like the first time I believe that's the first time anybody started using that word to red pill on something, is on that. So that's one pillar of the alt right. So, and that's nothing too outlandish, right? Um, but this also informs their beliefs in terms of they have a very traditionalist understand they're traditionalists. They think women should be in the kitchen, not out working. They're after sort of they say a 1950s America, but with the internet. So they're kind of traditionalists in this way, and that's what informs that. Um, the second pillar would be what people refer to as race realism, which is that there's a fundamental difference between the races. So whites, Asians, the Jews, things like this. That we've evolved in a certain way, that people are predetermined to behave in a certain way. So we've got fundamental difference between men and women. We've got behavioral determinism, fundamental difference between the races, race-based behavioral determinism. And then the third pillar is the Jewish question, which is predicated on the validity of evolutionary psychology, which is itself very dubious. But then to apply this,
I wonder how the Jewish question's related to evolutionary psychology, except just some anti-Semites have gotten hold of evolutionary psychology and they're playing with it.
yeah, well, the premise that I understand it to be, I haven't read Cultural Critique. It's just there's only so much rationalism I can take in one book before I can't read it anymore. But I read a synopsis of it, and I understand it to be that the Jews, over the course of the centuries of getting kicked out of countries for doing things like lending and loaning money and charging interest and things like this, they've evolved to be a people who can basically infiltrate a society from within, and almost like a virus, infect it and decay it and eat away at it. So yeah, I know. It's and they don't they don't even mention the fact that, well, hey, maybe they weren't allowed to work in the trades, back in the Middle Ages. Maybe there was a reason why you didn't have Jewish Mason guilds, in Germany back then, because it was not legal. It was illegal for them to do that kind of work. So, anyways, I mean, anybody listening to this, I would highly recommend Thomas Sowell's book, The Economics and Politics of Race. I actually have it here. This book.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of videos and content as well, explaining why these things have happened throughout the ages. Anyways, so that's what the alt-right is ideologically. So they've got a movement growing. They're growing, and then fast forward all the way to Charlottesville, and then Charlottesville happens. Do you remember that?
So it's made of sexists, racists, and anti-Semites.
Yes, that's ideologically, that's what it is.
All right.
That's the content of it.
All right. Now, what if I told you all collectivists are on the left and the essence of the right is individualism?
Well, yeah, that's correct, right? But the thing is that there's actually nothing about the alt-right that puts them on the right. They supported Trump up to a certain point, and then when they supported Trump in as much as Trump was talking about building the wall. That's it. But they did, I guess Ivanka's husband. No, Ivanka's the daughter. Yeah, I guess her husband is Jewish, and so they were all like, "Oh, he's got one of them in the inner circle. It's all ruined. It's downhill from here." And
I'm so glad I'm not worried about the Jews, because I would never get any sleep. It's like they're so powerful and they're everywhere, but I just don't care about it. I don't believe it's a problem. They've been pushed into certain areas of society, like you say, over the centuries, and they have certain, certain traditions. So.
Yeah, totally. So, anyways, yeah, I mean that's the alt right, and like this is what you do not want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. They are radioactive as an ideology. I wouldn't want to get anywhere near them. There's nothing actually on the right about them. They unironically support Yang. They are this is the Yang gang crew because they believe that Yang actually has the interests out for white people in Middle America. When he talks about automation and this sort of thing, they are then politically they are more or less apolitical. They don't really care. They're kind of like, yeah, whatever, capitalism, socialism, mixed economy, whatever. As long as it's white, it'll work. That's their political leanings. And so what they're after, their end goal, is to have an ethno state, which is I can't even believe I'm saying this. It sounds so ridiculous to even have to explain this at this point, but they basically want Israel for white people. That is their end goal. Maybe up in the Pacific Northwest. I know there was a guy doing a bunch of content, Harold Covington, that died a year or two ago, and I think it was something about building an ethno state in the Pacific Northwest or. So anyways, I don't know what their obsession is with cold northerly climates. I'm like, how about Costa Rica or something?
They like Norway and Sweden and Scandinavia. They like Finland.
Living in Germany, I can tell you that there's a certain latitude. There's like a belt, a latitude around the Earth that you want to be inside of. That's my opinion, anyways. But anyways, that's the alt-right. Yeah, and you do not want to go anywhere near them. Anybody that tells you that Candace Owens and all these other people are on the alt-right, one of two people will say this. Either A, the media using it as an anti-concept, or B, to cast that light onto everybody, or B, people who just fundamentally do not understand what the alt-right is. That's anybody saying that these people are at most you could say they are alt-light, which is sort of like civic nationalists, which are the civnats is what they call them. And I should say about the alt-right, politically, they're apolitical, but I would say if they did have an ideology, it would be NatSoc is what they call it, or NatSoc, which is National Socialism. So they are like unironic Nazi Germany economics and politics, and man, you don't want to go anywhere near them, believe me. But and then the civnats, they're like, oh, I'm not all about the Jewish question. I'm not all about the race thing. They're just for more just shutting down the borders. We have too many immigrants as it is. They're just basically the same thing but watered down, I would say.
All right. Well, so you think that the core of the problem here is that the objectivists were absent from a key discussion that was going on, and that's sort of why this situation has developed, or philosophy in particular. I mean, not the objectivists, but some better philosophy. They were searching for some better philosophy. They created They found something different.
Yeah. And, in Tu's video, and Tu's like, oh, yeah, it's why do people join the alt-right? It's, it's because they lack an identity. I mean, that's an impetus. That is not the cause for people joining the alt-right. The cause for people joining the alt-right is they lack philosophy entirely. And the alt-right offers that, at least to some extent. And, oh, by the way, also you get a nice, I'm a white person identity now, so
it offers
it's an impetus, but it's not a cause.
The cause of it is, of course, the bankruptcy of philosophy and the absence of ideas, and they're looking for some way to explain not only history, but the present state of things and the future. And if you put white as your overlay for history, things look pretty good for the last couple hundred years. You can't really explain. Unless the Greeks were white, I don't know. I was going to say you can't really explain the rise of Western civilization through that because we're all operating on a Greek system today, and I don't know if the Greeks were white or not. Maybe they think the Greeks were white.
Yeah. This is actually a huge discussion: is what is white? How do you define, whiteness? And anytime someone throws that argument out there, they say, their counter argument to that, the alt-right's counter argument to that is, well, you never asked that about what is a black person. You only use that on white people. which is fair. And the alt right, they do a really, if you wanted to commend them for something, they do a really good job of coming up with counter arguments and just a tsunami of statistics and data and facts that are, some of the facts are true, like Jews controlling media, being producing our movies, and they believe that the Jews created porn so as a way to demoralize our country, and our culture and this sort of thing. So they have this ocean, this tsunami of just facts and statistics and things like this. And to somebody who is not really well prepared to deal with that, like someone like myself who has thought a lot about objectivism and things like this going into that, somebody who's kind of a young person and they're vulnerable, they've gone through this university system that tells them that because they are male, they are sexist and rapist, because they are white, they are racist, and all this and that. And then, the alt-right comes along, and this is another key distinguishing factor between the alt-right and the other ideologies, is that, everything on the right is merely an absence of a negative. That's not the alt-right. They are offering something. They're offering a positive value, right? They're offering, here's identity, like Tu explained, and they're saying, and this is a future, and this is a direction that we're going. What is the right today? They don't have a direction, and that was the problem. That's the problem, is that the right today is mostly just an absence of the left. That's all it is. They're not really offering something. They're not offering a vision. And so if you're a intellectually vulnerable young person who has been, put through this nihilistic university system, and you jump on the internet and come across this funny alt-right podcast, it's not too much of a jump to start implanting those ideas into that kid's head. And that's how we got where we are today with the alt-right.
All right. So what is there anything that we can or should try to do as objectivists to try to straighten out the conversation? Like, I have actually worried about this, and I've mentioned this a few times in various talks. I've said, for example, I'm coming out here for freedom and stuff, and some of you guys like what I'm saying, but some of you aren't going to like the society that I'm building, because it's going to be a free society, and I'm going to have things like pornographers and strip clubs, and, I'm not going to be able to control fast food and, terrible movies. I'm going to have no control in my society over that. So if you like what I'm saying and you like freedom of speech and stuff, just realize that this is not going to be, you're not going to like some of the things about this society. It's going to have strip clubs and drunks running around it's going to have casinos. I'm not going to be able to stop people from gambling. It's going to have drug addicts. I'm not going to be able to stop people from using drugs if they want, because it's a consensual society. Mm-hmm. So the society I'm going to build might be pretty seedy looking, I'm afraid, and so I worry about that. I mean, what I'm offering people is New York and Los Angeles and just whatever the people build. That's what I'm offering. And they want picket fences, no crime, etc. I say the answer to no crime is make sure you have guns. Everybody have guns, So
yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do we need a utopian vision? Is it just the case that objectivists are going to have to set the background information on which everybody runs, and we're never going to be able to offer them this utopian religion that everybody seems to fall for?
Yes, so I guess this is more of that tactic question, which a lot of objectivists talk about, like what's the proper tactic? Yeah, I think that one of the problems that I see objectivists having is they view... they have a fundamentally Platonian view of, I would say, this future world, right? This perfect world in the future where everything's capitalist and we're all objectivists and so on and so on, and it's how to get there. I mean, I when I engage people on objectivism, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about any of that stuff. I think if you're trying to have a political conversation with somebody who is not an objectivist, you're not going to get very far, at least in my experience. And I have a lot of experience because I learned objectivism while living right in the middle of San Francisco. So I would, talk to people at bars, at restaurants, at work, all over the place. You name it. Long conversations, short conversations. I would debate people. I would go sit at a bar and wait till somebody sat down next to me, and then they would start a conversation. Or actually, what I would do a lot actually is I would take a book with me, like ITOE, and then I would read it at the bar because somebody will always ask you, "What are you reading?" And then I would engage them, and we would get. And one time, this one lady, she sat down next to me. Ironically, she was a corporate lawyer and a socialist, and so she sat down next to me and engaged, and we debated for 3 hours. And I went all the way down to metaphysics and all the way back up to politics, and broke all of it down, inductively and deductively, from politics to metaphysics and back to politics. Oh, and it took me 3 hours, and at the end, she finally relented and she was like, I actually want to get coffee and keep talking about this.
Wow.
But that's rare. That happened once in probably thousands of conversations. So I think that the best way to engage people on objectivism is to think about it at the personal level. I don't think about it in terms of this future perfect capitalist world that we're all going to live in. It's just, in my experience, it doesn't work. I think that you have to talk to people and you have to personalize it and help them understand that it's a personal philosophy for you. It's not a philosophy for capitalism. It's a philosophy for you, right? It just happens to be the case that you flourish under capitalism by design. So that's at least for me personally, that's how I engage. Now, in terms of like a greater tactic, how do you engage with these people on the alt-right? I mean, first of all, the alt-right are the enemy that the left deserves. So I don't really, just let them do their thing. Don't engage with them. I wouldn't get anywhere near them, but just let them and the left fight it out. They are the enemy that the left deserves. So and they left us anyway.
As we go out there and discuss these things with the current, I mean, here's how I view the current. By the way, I wanted to say before I go off there, I wanted to say that your advice jives with what I've been saying. That what your job as an objectivist is to find somebody near you, next to you, that you're in contact with, who doesn't understand something, and explain that thing to them. That's your next job. That's everybody's next job, constantly, every day when you wake up. Explain something to somebody who doesn't understand it, whether you're on a small or a big scale. So, yeah, I agree that it's not like a massive Platonic philosophy we're going to put into all society. It's a philosophy that each of us can use with our ideas every day when we wake up and act.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
And then I was going to continue with something else, but unless you can remember what else I was going to say, what were we on? What would it? But
I don't remember. But
go ahead and give your answer there.
Yeah, like I would. This is something that I don't really like about the objectivist community, is that they sort of throw this duty upon you that you have to go spread objectivism, and I reject that just straight out of hand. I try to learn, I try to work on myself, I try to learn, I try to live virtuously, and people ask me questions about how I'm able to do things. And then I tell them, well, it's because of this philosophy of objectivism that I'm able to think this way about certain things. People ask me questions at work. People ask me questions about how I got into my current job, because I had to make, when I first came out here to Germany, I had to make a complete career transition because I was in sales before. I finally had to admit to myself that I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't very good at it because I wasn't that passionate about it. I wish I had learned that about myself a lot earlier. And the problem was that I was evading and not being honest with myself. And so when I came out to Germany, what made me realize that was that I couldn't speak German, so I can't be in sales anymore. So what I did when I first got here is I called up this restaurant right in the middle of this big town that I live near, and it was an American diner. And so I just called them up. I said, look, I've got 10 years of professional experience. I have a college degree. And by the way, almost nobody in Germany has college degrees. So you're kind of a big deal if you have a college degree here. which we can get into later. That's interesting because university is free here. What people don't like to mention is that, when it's free, now you have to limit it. Not everybody can go to college. And the way they limit that is by separating the kids out at the age of 10 into 3 different school systems, and only one of them will even be able to go to college, and that's almost nobody. That's
Wow.
like less than 10% of the population even has the opportunity to get the certificate needed that would allow you to even apply to college. Actually, I think it's 18%, if I'm not mistaken, but I think like less than 10 actually go to college, So you end up with a system where, ironically, everybody is paying for the university schooling of a small percentage of elite of the population. So it's the actual complete reverse of justice here. In America, we have 30% of the kids graduating from college, and the same kids that go to college are the ones who pay for it. And in Germany, almost nobody goes to college, and everybody else has to pay for it. So it's a complete reversal of justice. So, and whatever the case, where was I? Oh yeah. So, I called up this diner, and I said, yeah, I know how to cook. I know how to cook your food. And that was, man, that was pride swallowing. So to go from making really good money in San Francisco to cooking food in a restaurant kitchen in, a town in Germany. And, I worked with a bunch of Syrian refugees and worked my way, and while I did that on the nights and weekends, I taught myself how to program, so then I met a friend. He was a Saudi national. He got me a job at the company that I work at now, and working with computers, and I'm making good money again. And within a year, I had made a complete career transition in less than 12 months. Went from unemployed and not speaking the native language to a job to a professional career in less than 12 months. And people ask me, how did you do that? And I said, objectivism. Like that, it is how I think about things. And when I worked at that restaurant, it was objectivism that reminded me that I should be thankful that I have somebody who is willing to pay me for my time. It wasn't me being angry at the world of, oh, how, woe is me. How did I end up in this situation? I was thankful that somebody was willing to allow me to capitalize on my time. And in the nights and the weekends, I thought I need to develop skills and work my way out of this situation. And I did. And through the virtues of, objectivism. So, when I engage people, it's usually from a place of them coming to me and asking me how I got, how I came upon some conclusion or some situation.
Yeah, when I give the advice to just explain things to the person nearest to you, I don't mean that there's a duty. Some people definitely take it as a duty, but your job, if you want to spread objectivism, is to explain whatever you can on whatever scale you're able to, like you sitting at the bar with a book, and explaining to whoever wants to engage with you. That's your job if you want to take it on. The way you do it is to explain whatever one idea. Now, the way I think that fits in the larger picture is we can explain things to libertarians, and we're actually in this weird situation right now where you have to pay lip service to the book Atlas Shrugged, or else a large constituency won't really like you. It depends on what you say about the book Atlas Shrugged. So we've got the President of the United States paying lip service to Atlas Shrugged. So that's the situation I see us in. And now it's time to say to people, oh, you like Ayn Rand? Well, her view of antitrust is way different than what you're saying. She thinks that antitrust is a gross violation of rights. And that's going to get people's attention. They're going to say, what? Ayn Rand was against antitrust? Oh, yeah. And that's our in with them.
Yeah, I do have a question. I've got a podcast. It's mainly political, and anybody listening to this, it is not a podcast for objectivists. It's a podcast for your mom and dad to listen to, this sort of thing. So it's pretty clean language. It's politics. It's capitalist. It's pretty right wing. But my co-host is not an objectivist. And being a show host, I had to ask myself, decide who am I as a co-host. What am I presenting, and how am I presenting it? Am I just a full-bore objectivist, or what am I doing here? Am I spreading objectivism, or am I co-hosting a show? And And I decided from the very beginning I just want to do a fun show with my buddy because we do this anyways. I'm in Germany, he's in Texas, and Saturday night I'd just stay up till 2 a.m. and we just talk politics. And one day we would decided to record it. And so I guess my question for you is, and so actually let me say first, so on that show, I rarely, only if it's like a real literal quote by like Peikoff or Rand, I'll talk about something that Rand said or something that Peikoff said. But, I'm just dropping ideas and content that we come across into my objectivist hopper and letting it go through the system and get processed. And then I spit out what my conclusion is on that. And I would surmise to say that it's, usually almost always objectivist in nature. But I do that without really talking about objectivism, and I notice that when objectivists talk about that, that when in their attempts to spread objectivism, they end up just talking about objectivism. And that always turns people off, And so, yeah, again, people come to me, they say, how did you come across this? Well, objectivism. Then I talk to them about it, But I rarely say, well, you should look into what Ayn Rand said about this, blah, blah, blah. Because then they're just like, oh God, here he goes again, So I just say it. I never say like Ayn Rand said or objectivism says. I just say it, And if they want to know where I got it from, I say objectivism and I point to the source material.
No, that kind of returns to my point. Your job isn't to convert them to objectivism. It isn't to give them a hallelujah conversion moment. It isn't to red pill them. Your job is to explain one idea, whatever idea they're confused about, that you have the time to explain to them. Like,
right? Okay, yeah.
So your job isn't a messianic conversion thing. Let me talk to you about the Lord and bring you to my side.
You have a moment to talk about objectivism?
Exactly, yeah. Have you heard of John Galt? Yeah, no, your job is to explain one thing, whatever the thing is you're discussing with whatever person is near you, however, if they've called into your radio show or whatever. And over the long haul, it's up to you how much I think that's great that you're talking about it without mentioning objectivism. A certain number of people are going to do that just because they don't want the electricity of the objectivist thing, and that is an electric thing. So they just want to talk about ideas, and they don't want to get associated with drama or the lady who slept with one of her acolytes. And so by doing that, you're getting people to think about these ideas without associations. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and this is another thing, man. Like, when I thought about, like, do I just publicly come out and call myself an objectivist or whatever, I was just like, what do I have to gain from that, It's almost always you have something to lose, and you're going to get involved in e-drama, and people are going to call you a bad objectivist, and oh this, and oh that, and blah, blah. And I just said, you know what? I am me, and I'm just going to give my ideas. And everybody else can go to hell with their, you're not an objectivist, or you're, this kind of an objectivist, or that, or, whatever. If I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong, and so this is why I just sort of kind of went my own way and didn't want to make it an objectivist show, and yeah, I've always wondered if that was the right approach. So it's interesting to hear your reaction to that. Refreshing, I would say.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I definitely think that if you're spreading the ideas, if you're correcting people's ideas and pointing out where they're wrong about things, then that's the work that we're doing. We're not spreading a gospel. And if people are curious, I assume if someone says, where are you getting your ideas? What are you talking about? What's all this stuff? Do you ever, I assume you'll mention Ayn Rand if you need to.
Oh, totally, dude. Yeah, and this is the thing, is I don't want to come across as if I'm like plagiarizing or taking something that somebody else said and using it for my gain without proper attribution. I attribute when appropriate, but I don't go on about it, And my purpose is not attributing a bunch of stuff to Ayn Rand or objectivism. My purpose is spreading my ideas, So yeah, that's, I guess, my thoughts on that. But yeah, and in terms of how to change this, I wanted to say this as well, in terms of like how to change the culture as a whole, it's doing exactly what we are doing right now. And like what I'm doing on my podcast, like your opinions actually bled over onto my podcast. I should tell you that now, because I was so hardcore And I gave my co-host hell about this, about tariffs. And I was, because I was getting it all from Yaron Brook.
Yeah.
And and I was attributing, it to Yaron Brook and saying, these are his ideas and this is, what he says about it. And my co-host would go back because my co-host is like more Trump, pro-Trump, kind of more MAGA. And so, we're going on about tariffs. And then and this went on for like weeks, week after week after week. And then I hear you talk about tariffs, and then I'm kind of like, oh, hell, maybe I got that wrong. And so then we were recording last night, and I was like, actually, Russ, I'm kind of reconsidering. So like your content bled over onto my show, so now all of my listeners are, gonna get this now too. And this is how it's this echoing effect of, and we're in this competition of ideas and who has the right ideas and making course corrections. And this is why I'm not on board with people coming down on you about this alt-right thing in the way that they are. That is not productive. If it's a process thing, then you're a bad objectivist. If it's a content thing, this is not the end of the world. We can fix this. We just spread some knowledge. Okay, cool. Boom, we're back along our way. If you're, sometimes the bus driver has to ask the passengers what that thing on the road up there is. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So this infighting and all of the e-drama and all of this is just not productive, and I don't like it. And our ideas can evolve. The process can't. The process of coming to the ideas can't evolve. That's why objectivism is a closed system. But the content, if you've got wrong facts, you're going to derive the wrong value judgments, right? We need to make sure our facts are in order. And if you've got a wrong fact, that doesn't make you a bad person, So, yeah.
I think the epistemology is fine, but also I think a large part of it is too much epistemology and not enough marrying of the moral and the practical. The moral and the practical can't be divorced. They're not separate things.
Right.
So to say that something works in reality is not pragmatic. That's a moral attitude.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the epistemology of it's one thing, but I think there's a lot of too much epistemology and not enough practice. And people are afraid to practice because they don't want to be pragmatic or practical.
What do you mean by that?
What do they mean by that? Pragmatic means unprincipled, but practical, you can't be practical unless you have principles. There's no way to actually get through your day unless you have principles. So
right.
To be practical, you have to have principles, but I think they equate pragmatic and practical. And so anytime you say, well, let's look at reality, they say, oh, what are you going to be pragmatic? So I think that there's...
Oh, I see. Yeah. I was trying to get what your reference to was. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Anybody that says that, they don't understand objectivism. Just full stop. If you say look at reality and then they come back with, oh, you're going to be pragmatic now, they don't understand objectivism. They've gotten halfway down. They probably are at the altruism, self-sacrifice versus selfishness part of objectivism, and they haven't gotten deeper than that. They haven't gotten to is ought fact value. They haven't gotten to the bridging the gap between metaphysics and epistemology. They haven't gotten that far. I heard Tu once describe learning objectivism for him as having happened twice. He learned it the first time, and then he read it's Peikoff's. I've got it here. Objectivism through induction.
Uh-huh.
And it was that. Then he was like, oh, wow. He was like, there's all of this other... I have to build reality up around me. And then understand it, and then come up with some sort of moral action, right? And it was that second time around that he really learned objectivism. And if I could offer anything to Yaron Brook, it would be that I wish he would spend more time on these deeper subjects, right? Because Yaron Brook got me all the way up to morality, right? And I was like fully on board. And then I became disinterested. I got bored. I was just like, this is it. Like I did all this work and it all comes down to altruism, And I was just like, oh God, and that's when I kind of started wandering around, looking around elsewhere. Like, okay, who else has got some ideas around here? And then, ironically, when I heard two say that, I was like, honestly, the exact same thing happened to me. You know, I looked around. Nobody had better ideas. Nobody had the right ideas. So I was still like, okay, yeah, objectivism, they've still got it. But I was like, there has got to be something more to this. And then I dove back in, and then that's when I began to understand the epistemology and metaphysics. And I'm actually in the process of making what I jokingly call myself or I jokingly call to myself my Jeffersonian OPAR, because what I'm doing is going through and highlighting the meat and potatoes and leaving out all the context, just as a way to like really shore up my understanding of some things.
Of
and
OPAR?
Of OPAR.
You leave out.
Yeah.
You leave. I can't imagine. Well, I can't even cut a sentence out of that book. What would you cut out?
Oh, I mean, well, basically anything where he begins to explain context, like he starts to provide context. So like that's important if it's your first time through.
Okay, so you're just taking the punchlines as sort of like the taglines or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just the raw meat objectivism is this, it is that. This is epistemology. This is induction. And then, but then he'll go on for a paragraph or two, sometimes a couple pages, for like talking about induction. Well, I don't need to hear all that. I've read it before. I more or less get it. I'm more interested in the reference point.
I see.
Yeah, so I'm like working my way through OPAR right now and doing that.
Yeah. For the audience, anyone who hasn't read OPAR, it's absolutely essential. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so these people that comment, where they're, oh, you're going to be pragmatic and look at reality, it's like, okay, you don't get it. You don't understand. You're about halfway there. You've got a whole half of the philosophy left that you need to understand.
Yeah, half or more. I mean, all of the philosophy takes place in reality. So to forget about reality is bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, you still got halfway to go, but it's the important half.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? The half without which all is lost.
Yeah. It's like you've learned, you've gone to school and learned. Now you got to get a job and practice it.
Yeah.
So that. All right. Now where were we? There was something, and I took us back to this because I wanted to say that thing, and now who knows where we were? Okay. What do we have left to cover here? What else were we going to cover?
Well, there was something I want to say something about being a firebrand. I've heard Rucka and Tu talk about being a firebrand, and they talk about Rand was a firebrand, and that's what ARI is missing, and I agree, and I'm on board with that. But I think we would do ourselves justice if we would really understand what being a firebrand means. Being a firebrand is not being rude, pissing people off, insulting people, calling people names, making satirical content to insult somebody. That is not firebrand. That's just being an asshole. Like firebrand is delivering the goods. That's what it is. And being able to do it quickly, on point, correctly, and all of that, and not apologizing for it, and really standing your ground. That's firebrand. And to be firebrand, you should know objectivism so thoroughly, forwards and backwards, if you're going to behave like a firebrand. There's no room for not completely understanding objectivism if you are going to take the firebrand approach. So I would encourage anybody out there who is wanting to take on the firebrand approach, because I see it in the comments. I mean, they're so insulting and rude and childish and immature in the comments on your video. I'm just like, these kids, this isn't just the internet. Okay. We're in reality here, like you say, so cool your heels on the insults and just insulting people. That doesn't make you a firebrand. That makes you're just acting like an asshole to other people who should be on your team. And guess what? That's bad for you, because nobody wants to be around you when you're that guy. It makes people, well, God, is he going to come after me next? I don't want to be near that guy. I mean, hell, this is one of the reasons why I was like very reticent to even like get involved in the objectivist community. because I was like, I don't want to be near them. You know, I want to go do my own thing.
Now you've
you know?
stuck your head into the hive because
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Mr. Cropper's
can't wait
definitely on the objectivist scene. So
yeah, I had to warn my co-host that I was doing this show. I was like, hey, just FYI, you know, our YouTube is like nobody's subscribed. I think we have like 15 subscribers or something. Which, by the way, I'll go ahead and say, if you want to follow us on YouTube, we put all of our stuff up there too. It's called Zero Gravity Media is the channel. But yeah, I had to warn him. I was like, yeah, we might have some comment activity on the next show we put up. But I don't know. So anyways, yeah, don't just be a firebrand, but don't be an asshole.
all right, yeah, that's good advice, and that's a good way to think about it because you are tempted to call these people idiots and assholes and stuff like that, and I do think it does detract from the message, however justified it may be.
Right.
It's better to do a good takedown and keep your cool and let them fall apart and let them go into name calling.
Yeah, totally.
If you can.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Zero Gravity Media.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just gonna pull it up on the screen so the folks can see.
I should probably. I need to organize our playlists. I'm gonna get.
I see
some
two. One's with and one's without spaces. Are they the same?
We should be the first one. That's like this. The logo is like a circle with a horizontal line.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's somebody else out there with. They've done it with no spaces in their name.
Ah. Bastards.
Yeah. All right. So I found the place. I'm subscribed. I'm your.
Wait. Yeah, I need to. I'm going to get some Charles II listeners complaining about the chaos in our videos because of I don't have the playlist organized. So I'll do that. I'll try to do that today or tomorrow. Yeah, and we've got a couple shows over there. I do a show called Capitalist Lifestyle Show with just, you know, I have ideas sometimes and I want, you know, a 30-minute format where I can just discuss that idea that I had about some life issue. But the main show, our big show, is a 2 to 3 hour show on politics called Hardly Strictly Politics. And we call it that because we allow ourselves the freedom to go in, you know, sometimes content needs to be more philosophical. Sometimes it needs to be more historical. Sometimes it needs to be more just straight politics. So we kind of allow ourselves room to go in the direction that the content requires.
Well, excellent. I'm glad to hear that there's somebody out there doing a podcast with objectivism, but on the sly, not telling anybody what you're up to.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to pitch it like that either. I don't mean to. But...
No. I think that's a lot of what's going to happen. If we want objectivism to spread, then people are going to hear these ideas and they're just going to turn around and they're going to say, you know, the trolley question with ethics is ridiculous because we don't live in an emergency. Stop talking about emergency ethics as the basis of ethics. And they're not going to say, I got that from Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness. They're just going to take that idea and defeat the trolley car ethic person. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. These ideas are just going to become the basic cultural background norm that you don't need to make a reference for. You know, like, oh, come on, what's your reference? Who gave you that argument? Man, that argument just makes sense. What do you mean? It's just floating around in the culture. You know, that's what the attitude towards these ideas is going to have to be if we're ever going to spread objectivism far and wide.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Okay, so don't be a firebrand asshole. All right, next.
Yeah, well, be a firebrand. Don't be an asshole.
Right, don't be the asshole, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about tariffs because I need you to red pill me. I red pilled you on the alt-right. I need you to red pill me on tariffs now.
So I wanted to do a takedown video on tariffs because I don't want people to think I'm a Trumpkin or a Trumpster or a Trump acolyte. You know,
I actually heard Yarn Rourke the other day call him a Trumpkin. Him Trumpkins.
He's talking about people like me who think that Trump does some good things. You know.
Yeah.
Dare
you say such things?
Yeah, bizarre. But I don't want to get off on Iran and Amy and their view of Trump and tariffs and should we do anything about Hong Kong? Yes. Should we put tariffs on them? No. I mean, how bizarre is it? So, so tariffs. I was going to do a takedown video about tariffs and say, Trump, here's a mistake Trump is making, you know. So I started putting it in my mind. I said, okay, what do I know about tariffs? First of all, of course, they're a tax, they're a destruction, they're a cost, etc. They're a restriction on free trade. I said, okay, the one thing that really stuck out in my mind, though, was that tariffs were the only form of taxation in the Constitution of the United States. And so I started really thinking about that. I thought, okay, so our founding fathers actually had a tax-free zone inside our borders. The dream of objectivism, no taxes. Voluntary taxation. They achieved it. And it was that way until 1895. Now, why would the founding fathers
I think it was 1913, wasn't it?
Well, I think that somewhere in the late 1800s they started. You're talking about the Federal Reserve or what? The income tax?
Yeah, I think that's. I was under the impression when we were recording last night, my co-host said this, that tariffs were the only form of taxation up until 1913. So I have not vetted that.
Well,
I don't know.
If he's referring, I think what he would be referring to is 1905, because I think that the first direct tax was in 1905, I think, and it was only on very rich people.
Yeah.
So, but he's got about the right. I say the 1890s because I think they started needing other forms of revenue in the 1890s, and that's why they ended up in 1905 changing the Constitution and allowing direct taxation. So, why would the founding fathers set up a tax-free zone inside of our borders, but allow us to tax things coming across the borders? And so then the sentence, taxation is the power to destroy, comes in. So there's my two premises. The founding fathers had a tax-free zone inside of our borders. Taxation is the power to destroy. Therefore, who should we allow the power to tax? How should we be able to tax? Only things outside of our borders. Brilliant.
Yeah, but Yarn Brook would then argue that the enemy nations are not paying those taxes. We are.
Only the people who want to buy stuff from enemy nations are paying it. If you live inside America and mind your own business and buy stuff from Americans, you don't pay this.
Yeah.
Now, that's one question. Is it fair to make people pay? The people who funded the government, they funded the entire federal government, were the people who bought stuff from overseas. Is that fair? That's a question. So I'm kind of with Jim Woods on the idea that as long as our elected representatives are setting the taxes, that's close enough of a facsimile to voluntary taxation that we don't really need to worry about this question of voluntary taxation. We've got it's representative taxation, and that's what the Boston Tea Party was for. So ultimately, I'm not too worried about it. But if you're going to tax somebody, it seems like foreign industry is that, because if you set the tax at 90% on foreign industry, that's going to destroy their ability to compete within your borders, right?
Yeah.
So essentially you're destroying, and especially if America is the biggest market, and because we're a free country and we're the most productive, we are a massive market. So if we make it a huge cost for you to send your goods into our country, we're essentially destroying your company, or partially destroying it, or potentially destroying it.
So your view on it is essentially the sort of radiation is the cancer view. Like, yes, it harms you, but in the process heals the problem.
Something like that, yeah. And it is painful to Americans who want a good wristwatch. They're going to have to pay this tariff to get one from Switzerland. Yeah, so it does hurt us.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Why is voluntary taxation not, or is it? I don't know. This is a valid question. Is voluntary taxation for you? Is that still the end goal?
Yeah, but I don't know if philosophically if we haven't already achieved it. I mean, we put Trump in and he drops the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20%. So we're obviously not in some maniac system where taxes just go up and up and up and we have no effect on them. The people we elect can have some effect on the taxes.
Yeah.
So, we can argue about the percentage that we're paying. Maybe it's really high. I say if we dismantled the welfare state entirely, then the government wouldn't really have anything to tax us for. Do away with Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all that garbage, and our budget would be 1/4 what it is right now. And so I don't, and I think voluntary taxation, here's one thing I think about. If, let's say we use tariffs, and so we can't push the tariffs too high because then it reduces foreign trade and people complain and they need stuff from Germany, etc. So this tariffs
Right.
stay kind of low. So the government sometimes would make an appeal and they would say, shortfall in the budget or whatever. So then General Motors would say, this year we're giving 7,000 automobiles to the federal government so they don't have to pay this. So, that's a less budget. And then Boeing says, we were going to deliver 13 bomber aircraft this year. We're only going to charge for 7 of them. We're going to get, and they make a big public splash campaign. We're giving this much money. This is our taxes, because they're not forced to give anything. So when the government gets in a tight spot and the tariffs aren't quite covering it, then, or whatever, the taxes the representatives have said aren't quite covering it, then I think that there would be some room for gifts to the government, public gifts that corporations would give, for their well-being media wise. So that I think voluntary taxation definitely is a direction we should go in. I just get in trouble with Jim Woods every time I mention this. He says, quit with the voluntary taxation thing. We elect our representatives and it's not a big deal.
Who is Jim Woods? I don't even know who that is.
Just a long time serious objectivist that's
Okay.
known me for years, and every time I slip up with something, he leaves some very long comments, and then I have to do videos straightening out my views. So he's
Okay.
he's like my good conscience or something like that.
Okay, so this is not an antagonistic relationship.
No, I don't think so, Jim. He said if I attack ARI, he will work to destroy me. So we'll see. I don't know exactly where we stand at this point.
Huh, interesting. I mean, yeah, I guess my opinion has shifted a little bit in the sense that if we are going to have a taxation, then perhaps tariffs would be the better form than just direct taxation. Um, here's a random question. Why don't objectivists like move to a place like Cayman Islands, for example? Because that's what that is. They have no taxation within the island itself. It's just import duties. That's how they fund the entire thing. I always wonder, like, why are objectivists? Why don't they just like move to the Caymans or something like this?
Well, a lot of them have moved to places like Hong Kong, and a certain amount of objectivists tried to move to New Hampshire when the Free State Project was going
I
on.
remember that. Yeah, yeah. I still follow them on Facebook after all these years.
I was involved with them, and I signed up to be one of the first 2,000 to move up there. But then the more I talked to them, the more I saw, okay, this is not only a mixed bag of people; these are a bunch of nutcases.
Yeah, dude.
So
Like, yeah. When I was in San Francisco, I got involved. Well, not involved, but I joined on Facebook. I joined like the San Francisco Libertarian group, and like some of the stuff that they were sharing into that group, I was like, I do not belong here, and like left,
yeah,
because it was like these like hardcore radical feminist libertarian types,
yeah,
where they were like getting involved in like the slut walks and all this, and like I was just like, this is I don't know what this is. This is like a new third rail of politics that I've never seen before. Yeah, I know about those like really nutty libertarians, and
yeah,
and like yeah, going back to what we talked about, like the reason you get these types is precisely because libertarianism lacks a philosophical foundation.
yeah,
That's how this comes about. Because anybody who's going to go libertarian is somebody who's probably pretty passionate about ideas, right? And they're not going to stop. They are the type of person where they are going to continue going in some direction. And if you don't offer them a direction, then they are loud personality types. They read a lot. They take ideas seriously, and they'll create their own direction. And that is this like these types of libertarians, and it's just hilarious to me to see sometimes.
yeah. I think that's what we've got with Jordan Peterson. We've got this libertarianism spreading through the culture. Everybody talking about, okay, the government's obviously failed. We all know that. Now what do we do? And Jordan Peterson comes and he says, these myths that we are trying to throw out are more important than you realize.
Yeah,
And they all turn to him and they go, wow, we are throwing a lot of stuff out. We don't go to church anymore. Is that why society's disintegrating?
yeah,
So it gives a larger story. So there's this dam behind which libertarianism has all these people waiting for something else, waiting for the next step, the bigger answer. And
Right.
Jordan Peterson says, go back to the myths. Go back. Go back.
Yeah. 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 His intrinsicism. Yeah.
So our job is to jump out there and say, remember Christopher Hitchens. Don't go back. Atheism is the answer. Don't go back.
Yeah.
Religion is bad, and give them a more firm philosophical basis than just there's always a snake in the garden, and we always have to make a sacrifice to get ahead in life. Just cliched garbage like that is not going to be the basis for anything at all.
Yeah.
But it's the best thing that's on offer right now, which is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, Jordan Peterson's malevolent universe premise just all over is just rampant. Life is suffering. Just do your duty, do what you're supposed to do, and happiness will be bestowed upon you if you're lucky, but probably not.
And don't
But
worry
who knows,
about it.
because it says in this book that
And don't worry about it, because happiness isn't the purpose of life anyway, and happiness is just it's unimportant. Have you heard his spiels about that? I mean, it's not even.
Yeah, totally.
It's not even do what's right so you'll be happy. It's do what's right in spite of the fact that it might not give you happiness, because happiness isn't important. I mean, that's atrocious.
Well, yeah. This is why he frames it in this light of like, yeah, we can all agree happiness is good, but you have to find meaning, and in the process of doing that, maybe you find some happiness.
Right.
That's how he frames it all. And yeah, all on top of this, like very, very malevolent universe premise, I've noticed coming from him. And actually in the process of, I think I got this out of Opar, but in the process of going back and making my Jeffersonian Opar, I came across one part of it where he talked about the Hegelian social primacy of consciousness and then the individualist primacy of consciousness. And that really struck me in today's context, because I don't know if you know who, Slavoj Zizek. You know him?
Yeah, Marxist guy.
Yeah. Well, no, not Marxist. He's changed his tune. He's a Hegelian now.
Oh, how is that different?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know, but in this, did you see the debate that he did with Jordan Peterson recently?
Yeah, I just couldn't. It was so boring. I listened to Jordan Peterson's part, but I just zoned out when he was talking.
Well, yeah, Slavoj Zizek is just all over the place. I mean, he's just extreme. It's painful to listen to. Not just because of his thick accent, but
I tried to listen to it, and when you sit there and listen for several minutes to somebody, and then you go, okay, what's going on here? This is just dribble and garbage. And
yeah, totally.
So
I think I posted on my Facebook, like, the debate topic should be the morality of insufferably long tangents, and long and convoluted tangents, because they both do that.
Yeah. And Jordan Peterson isn't. Yeah, he does not. He's not a great debater, I'm afraid. I don't know who is. Hitchens was at least funny to listen to. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, dude. I love Hitchens' content, man. His stuff was gold. But it's actually really interesting watching this debate between Hitchens and then Ben Swanger and Ridpath. Because I love Ridpath. He is such a boss in that capitalism socialism debate that he did with Peikoff. I've watched that debate. I don't know how many times I've watched that debate. Probably 15 or 20 times.
Is that the one where he got up and he said, "I'm sick and tired of the socialists saying this or that or whatever."
yeah. He's like, "I'm sick and tired of you people. I really am." He just kind of like says it all casually. It's like, dude, that guy's such a boss, man.
Cool.
Yeah, that is Firebrand. You know what I mean? Like, when I think Firebrand, I think Peikoff, Ridpath, and the capitalism socialism debate. But they weren't calling them names and calling them morons and this sort of thing. They were just like, you know what? I'm getting sick of you people. We come in here with the hard work done, and all we're ever met with, and then he goes on that long list of logical fallacies, appealing to emotion, and he goes on this long list of everything that the left does when you debate with them, and just lays it out and just calls them straight out for it. No need for him to call them morons or something like this. So I think when I think Firebrand, that's what that moment where Ridpath did that best encapsulates Firebrand that I am aware of.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. I'm going to have to try to take it on board. I definitely am fond of people calling people morons when the occasion arises. So
yeah, I mean, I do it too, but I mean, somebody has to really display moronic behavior if I'm going to call them a moron.
yeah.
Like there's some guy that comments on your videos, or I can't remember, maybe I commented on one of Rucka's videos or something. It's like disco something, I don't know, and claims to be an objectivist, and he puts these long comments and block quotes, and then it says on here blah 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 blah, and I got into it with him once, and I think I was just like, dude, you are a complete idiot, and I'm ending this conversation now. And I can't be bothered with people like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I see his name, I think Disco Autiste, because of the name looks like something, I don't know, and he just sounds like he might be autistic or something.
Yeah, I definitely know the guy you're talking about. I wonder how much I should distance myself from conversations that are random, and how much should I be the call-in show of objectivism, because I'm tempted to just invite anybody who disagrees with me to come on and talk.
Yeah.
And like I did with Existence University, he keeps bothering me. I say, let's come on and talk. But
yeah.
He already came on and talked with me, and everybody can go watch that and see how that went. And I said, well, here we are. What do you have? And nothing. So
yeah.
Should I be the call-in talk show of objectivism, or should I stay above it and be professional and just do one-on-one serious things like this with people that are basically vetted in some way? So I don't know where I'm going to go with it, but
yeah, I mean, I would try, and I would iterate. That's what I would do. I would try all of the above and figure out whichever one's the best. I mean, I wouldn't engage with people too much in the comments, because you're just going to get sucked into a black hole, and it does nothing for you. With some of these people, I would let them hash it out. I would read the comments. I would pay attention to them. I would pay attention to the people that are putting out legit comments and things like this. And those people I would invite on. But I mean, I wouldn't just open the doors and just say, yeah, anybody who wants to come on the show can come on. I would, they need to put forth a little bit of effort, show that they've got the chops, that they meet basic requirements. They're honest, they're not an asshole. These kinds of things, I would never ever let somebody on my show that is fundamentally dishonest. That could be because all that person can do is damage at that point. That's it. If they're dishonest, all they can do is damage. You can only lose from that. So I would have certain basic criteria that I would have. And yeah, call-in show format. I mean, I liked Peacock's old radio show, but I don't know. I mean, objectivism and the kind of stuff that you're talking about and that we're talking about warrants a longer format. You really need to have time to hash ideas out, and to have an interesting conversation when you're talking about objectivism and culture and these kinds of things. And this is why Rucka and Twos, it's so unfortunate. This is why those shows were so good, because those 6 hour long formats gave them the room. It gave them the space to really explore different paths and things like this. And like in music, when musicians have the space to really explore some sort of sonic path and then come back to the original thing that they were jamming on, that's, and you can't do that in a 2-minute pop song. You need time, you need space, and you need the right people there, and I think that's why their format worked really well. So I don't know if a call-in show would do really well or not.
Yeah, Peacock's call-in show was frustrating because he was too short with it, 15 minutes or whatever, and he said, "Well, that's all for this week," and then the music would come on.
I was actually listening to it like a year or two ago. I'm always trying to consume objectivist content. It's because I always forget things, and listening to it again reminds me. But I was listening to it like a year ago, and he was talking about databases. He's like, "There's this really really cool new technology. It's called the database." And it stores information. It was just funny because that was such a different moment in time from where we are today,
Uh-huh. I can't
But
imagine what he's talking about. The database, some online thing.
yeah, yeah, just the fact that they exist now and they can store infinite amounts of information.
Funny.
Yeah, yeah, it was really funny. I like that old objectivist stuff.
Yeah, I love Peikoff. I was listening to his How to Think in Principle or Why to Act on Principle.
Dude, I listened to that 1 week ago. Like
It's
just a week ago. Yeah.
really, it's excellent, isn't it? What
Yeah.
did you pull anything out of it? Any current things out of it?
Yeah, well, we were actually talked about it on my show. That and I think I forgot to attribute of this, so I apologize to anybody who catches this, but that part where he was talking about you have to act on principles all the time, not just sometimes. And something that I've talked about on my show in the past is that, like, if we call it cucking on your principles. This is another one of those internet terms, and have you heard this term get used, like cucks on the right and things like this?
Get used.
Like people use this word to describe other people. They call them cucks, and
I've heard of cuck. I like that. I like to call people that.
Yeah, I think it's funny. But I've thought about, like, what does that word actually mean when they say that? And really what it actually means is they are inconsistent on their principles. They're unprincipled. So when you call someone a cuck, you are calling them unprincipled. It's just a funny way of doing it, And so what Peikoff was describing there was a situation in which somebody was, you can't just be a murderer when the mob hires you to be one. You either are or you aren't. That was the Peikoff's example, and that one stuck with me.
I liked when he said, to be called a liar, it's enough to tell 2 or 3 venal whoppers. You don't have to go around lying constantly all the time.
Yeah.
So, and that's true. You think of somebody as a liar only because they have told a couple of big lies or something, not because you can't trust them when they say the sky is blue. Maybe that's true. Maybe they tell the truth on that. But It's the principle that they have broken. It's the principle. And when you act on principle, you have to act consistently over time, not just, I'll act on principle today. That's not principled. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I've got a playlist of, like, I don't know, 40, because ARI's been putting a lot of this stuff up on YouTube lately, I've noticed.
Yeah,
so every time I add it to this playlist I have on YouTube, that anytime I'm barbecuing, I barbecue a lot, being originally from Texas. But yeah, I mean, so I just hit play and then I just barbecue for like an hour and just listen, and I've got like 40 videos in my backlog that I'm trying to work my way through right now. Nice. And that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent piece, and I'm going to do a couple of excerpts from it.
Yeah.
I think in an upcoming video, because he has a couple things to say.
Yeah.
One thing he says about, he says you shouldn't just look the other way if some country is taking over Nicaragua, and he's referring to when Reagan went down there and took care of the Nicaragua situation or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was in the Q&A.
Yeah, and then he says, or Florida. You shouldn't look the other way when someone's taking over Florida. So, this is a thing that I've talked about before with the open border objectivist debate. So we let a whole bunch of South Americans of various kinds, including Cubans, lots of Cubans, into Florida, and Miami is a very Cuban city now. And what has happened down there? Has it split off and become a little communist enclave, or have they become Americans and they have started to influence Cuba because they still have family member and stuff there?
Yeah.
So I hope that just like when we brought all the Europeans here in the 1800s, and then we turn around and we have a huge influence on Europe throughout the 1900s because all the Europeans came here.
Mm-hmm. And
then in the 1960s, a whole bunch of Vietnamese came here. In the 1950s, a bunch of Koreans came here. And what's happened with that? Vietnam is a freer country now than they used to be, just through their natural internal processes. And they are working their way towards a more consensual society, partly with the help of a massive Vietnamese community in America that's sending money, sending expatriates back, sending expertise. and we're having a cultural influence on Vietnam, even though we left because we brought so many immigrants here. We're having a cultural influence on these countries, including, I hope, the Middle East.
Yeah. You also have to remember too that the opposite happens as well. The reverse happens. They bring their terrible, awful stories with them over into our country and talk about it. And
Yeah,
then our own people go, "Good God, really? That's what socialism is?"
yeah,
Okay, yeah. Maybe I need to rethink some positions here. I work with a guy who's a Vietnamese refugee here in Germany, and he'll tell stories about just casually seeing dead bodies. Oh yeah, I've walked down the street. There's some dead person, had their head shot, just like it was like seeing a stray dog on the street. Um, and you can kind of see these like Germans that are standing around them, like their eyes just widening, and you see the gears working upstairs, and they're thinking to themselves, "Oh my God, maybe the socialist experiment isn't an experiment we want to be a part of," you know.
it's funny the Germans would be seduced by it. They've already tried socialism a bit, but
Yeah,
that's all been educated out of them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, So, anyways, yeah, I actually wanted to ask you. Okay, so like, I mentioned that I'm not really in the objectivist scene. I don't necessarily. I'm fine being on the periphery and kind of watching and being in the know. Um, but that being said, I don't. I also don't have the history, like your context in terms of objectivism, how you came to objectivism. What have I know you used to be super prolific on YouTube. Um, so like I don't know, what's your backstory?
So I started reading. I started with the For the New Intellectual, and I read that when I was like 13 or 14. And pretty soon after that, I had read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and then I started on the philosophy. By the time I was 18, I had read Opar. And so, long time objective. I'm 40 now. So, 25 years I've been reading and studying it. And I've called myself an objectivist for more than 20 years. So, that's my background with objectivism, how I came to it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I went on YouTube to search for objectivist content and just watch some videos, watch some good YouTube videos about objectivism, and there was zero, nothing, nada.
Yeah, I know.
So
I remember that.
that's how I started. That's how I got started. I said, well, all right, I guess I'm going to have to put some stuff up. And so I started. That's how it started. Um, and now I'm at the center of a little group of objectivists that are longtime hardcore objectivists, a lot of them, and I think some of my viewers are pretty high up in the objectivist movement, or they know people
Okay.
pretty wide in the objectivist movement. So whatever my channel is, it's a pretty strong group. It's a pretty dedicated and thoughtful group. It's I have been tempted to do videos that are more popular in the past, like I did an anarchist video that immediately got 10 times the view of any other video, the day I posted it. So I could have started talking about anarchy and made my channel the Anarchy Channel, and I specifically shied away from big debates with anarchists because it was bringing lots of garbage to my channel. Lots of people who would come in and it was garbage, a bunch of garbage people. So
Man, I looked at some comments on some video that you did back then, and they were like, dude, I was like, man, the internet has really tamed down over the years, man, because it was like they were like wishing death upon you or something. I was like, good God, where did these people come from?
yeah, it was the Wild
I honestly
West.
thought it was like a coordinated campaign against you or something.
It never came to fruition. I'm still here. I can't believe my channel hasn't been erased, but
Why is that?
because some social justice warrior ninny would complain about something I say on here.
Mm,
I don't know.
yeah,
And
you're not important enough yet. That's the problem.
yeah, yeah. And the day that I become important, they probably will come and look at it and say, "Oh my God, he endorses Trump. Get rid of that channel."
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So, are this group of objectivists? How do they feel about the current state of ARI?
some of them some of them are the ones that have been banging on my door saying, "Hey, ARI is a problem," and some of them are folding their arms saying, Brandon, don't associate with those people. ARI is not a problem. They're split.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have zero context for anything that goes on at ARI or the objectivist community, so that's interesting.
I just quit paying attention to it, except to go there when I have a question about something or wanted to know what was going on with current events. I really quit paying attention to it, but now I go there to find out what's going on or for current events, and they're spouting open borders garbage, leftist garbage, like full-on leftist garbage, like as though they're being paid by some far left cabal or something to spout some line. I mean, of course we're for open borders, but in what context? During World War II, in the middle of World War II, open our borders and let anybody come across that wants to come across? Like, in what context are we for open borders? So
Yeah, that's
and they're just going to drop the context and spout open borders, like as though 90% of their funding is coming from some open border group or something like that. Very suspicious.
I wonder. I've thought about this in the past couple of months. I've wondered if maybe they've given up on the right. They've sort of given up on the right. They believe that religion has a stranglehold on the right that's never going to be broken, and that if you're going to get anybody, you're going to get the left, and we need to flip the left. Like, I legitimately think that may actually be a strategy based upon the things that that ARI produces.
It makes sense. It's absolutely delusional because the left is collectivist and the right is individualist. That's the essence of the two sides right now. So it's insane for them to view it that way. But yeah, if they view it through the lens of rational scientific atheists versus the mystical Christian altruists, they probably think of it in those terms. But I think of the individualist, free Christian salt of the earth. That's how I view those people. I mean, they have individualist views and views about freedom and get the government out of our lives that objectivists can really get on board with, even though these people say at the end of the day they think somebody created the universe. I mean, these people don't even go to church anymore, for hell's sakes.
Yeah. I mean, my dad is a really good example. He's a very intellectual dude, not an objectivist, but a very intellectual guy. He's Catholic, but he is Catholic for 1 hour a week. And the rest of the time, he is basically an objectivist. And he even says that. He's like, yeah, I'm totally on board with it and everything. I mean, he doesn't really understand it. He doesn't understand the epistemology and stuff like this. And, so he'll get pulled in one direction from Jordan Peterson here and there and intellectuals and whatnot here and there. But by and large, in terms of the real way in which he lives, and I think I'm using him as an example because I think he's very common, much more common than we give our society, our culture credit for. The way in which he lives, his productivity. I mean, he didn't retire. He switched careers. Now he's scoring low-budget movies, scoring music to low-budget movies after a career in sales, these types of people are productive, hardworking people. They otherwise live by the virtues of objectivism, whether they realize it or not. Most people do. Now, when you get into an intellectual conversation with them, you wouldn't think so, because then they'll start talking about Jordan Peterson and the snake in the grass, and they'll start talking about who knows what else, maybe religion or something like this. But then they just go back to doing what they were doing before, which is being a productive person, living otherwise rationally because life demands that you do. The extent to which you don't behave rationally is the extent to which you don't live a good life. And most Americans live a good life. And that's precisely because they are following, getting in line with reality and living an otherwise pretty objectivist type of life, whether they realize it or not. I mean, that's what objectivism has going for it, is that our philosophy, the factory setting, is flourishing. That's what objectivism is delivered with. So the extent to which we flourish around us is the extent to which I'm asking who's doing the flourishing. Well, all of these people. And Good. So I think we don't give just our culture enough credit. I think they deserve a lot more credit than objectivists give them credit for.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And if we were to look at the like you say, they have their beliefs or whatever, but then they go back to just living their life. So they're kind of misintegrated. If we look at what are they misintegrated around, we would find that a lot of them are misintegrated around sort of the values of the Constitution and freedom of speech and freedom of the press and stuff. And that's sort of like their background philosophy is sort of like Americanism. A lot of the the guys who voted for Trump, these people, and if you look at the background philosophy of the left, it's whatever the group is saying today.
Yeah.
And there's a very big difference between people who are misintegrated around just sort of a tradition of individualism,
Yeah.
and people who just try really hard to do whatever the group is telling them to do today.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And the objectivists need to get their heads out of the sand about this. The group thinkers are not our friends, and the individualists might not like us all the way through our philosophy from top to bottom, but they will stand shoulder to shoulder with us in a war and defend freedom. And the group thinkers are the ones that are going to set up camps to exterminate the people who don't think like them.
Yeah, totally.
So it's a pretty serious situation, I think, and I think the old boys out there who just go about, like you say, if America's a productive place, who's doing all this producing? Who's flourishing around here? It's these people. It's these good-hearted, salt-of-the-earth people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's my show. That's my show is for those kinds of people, specifically those kinds of people. Some people who generally like Trump, but they've got some reservations. They definitely align themselves on the right, but they do have an intellectual vein in them, and they like the hard-hitting ideas. We've got people who write in wanting more just concrete little arguing points, and then on the next show I'll explain, here they are, but you need to understand that you're not going to win an argument by using these. You need to address the root principle at hand, and then I'll explain the principle.
Nice.
And these are the kinds of people that listen to our show. So I mean, I know factually true through direct experience that these people, we can make a difference here.
Yeah. Well, I apologize if anybody comes over to your show and causes hell now.
Yeah, that's all good, man.
I'll leave.
I actually got to think about it. It's like nobody comments on any of our stuff. We have like no YouTube. Everyone listens to us on other platforms, various platforms, but nobody listens to us on YouTube. So like any comment will be welcome, I guess. Do I really want to say that? I don't know.
I don't know if you want to say that.
Yeah.
But I'll leave links to your stuff in the video below this video and stuff. Well, okay. What else shall we cover? Do we need to? What else? We did the Firebrand thing. We did the alt-right. So my view on the alt-right is that I think it's a collectivist smear. I just want to sum up, I guess, my view. And it's a messy thing, and I don't think that the racists and collectivists belong over on the right, where everybody who hates collectivism is running to. I don't think they're going to fit in over there, and if they do fit in over there, then
well, they don't want to be there. That's the thing. They don't want to be there. They don't want. This is why they created a new name, alt-right, because they don't like the right.
Well, let's make sure that they're not comfortable over there, instead of just backing away and saying, "Oh, this is all a scary situation. Objectivists are only for ideas. We're not for actual politics." Today when President Trump has to pay lip service to Atlas Shrugged, and having read Atlas Shrugged, this is our opening. This is our time to start arguing with these people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I'm doing a podcast. That's why I'm coming on this show, because now is our time. If there ever was a time for objectivism, it's now. It's here and now. Today, we have Dave Rubin, who has an enormously huge platform. I'm waiting for an objectivist to get on the Joe Rogan show. I don't know if he'll ever have one on, but I would guess that he would. If there was a time to make a big cultural change, it's now. It's today. The cost of producing content. I mean, this microphone I'm talking on right now was $37 on Amazon. The full thing. The arm, the I've got a mixer here that I bought, but it can get you up and running with a good mic for less than $40. And Adobe Audition, which I use to produce my content, I mean, that's cheap. That's like $10 a month. SoundCloud account's like $10 a month, and boom, like it's not difficult to get yourself out there if you put in even a little bit of effort. And so I would just encourage, we need more. We need more content. We need more of the right messages. We need more people out there putting this stuff on YouTube, because there is a dearth of good intellectual content today. And people are so thirsty for it. I've never seen anything like it. People love it. And we need to be ahead of the curve. I'm afraid we're already a little bit behind the curve. And we need to get ahead of the curve. We need to be the thought leaders in pushing this stuff out there if we're going to make a real cultural change.
Yeah, and some people are going to object a little bit and say, well, what are we supposed to do? Have Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson come to the Ayn Rand Institute and speak and try to get to know them? Well, that's what we did. We did have them speak, and we are trying to get to know them. And what has happened? Jordan Peterson's still going full steam ahead in his direction, and he's not going to convert to objectivism. And how many people were converted to objectivism by his appearance at ARI? I don't know. I hope thousands. But so what do we do? And this is a question in my mind. I don't know exactly. What do you think we do? We just argue and talk about it? Do we try to offer a candidate? Do we try to whisper in the ear of the candidates and tell them what our political views should be? Or do we need to get the Ayn Rand Institute into order first, so they're not spouting this open border stuff? They're spouting more stuff like patriotism and defend America and defend freedom and defend rights, instead of open borders and let us be invaded by violent hordes of foreigners.
Yeah, I mean, man, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I wouldn't even worry too much about ARI. I wouldn't waste the time and energy thinking about it. Let them do their thing. You do your thing. Don't worry. What was that line in Fountainhead when
Tui, I don't think of you?
Yes, exactly. Like, that would be my approach. And that is my approach. I'm like, that was my approach. Like, I don't know what these people are going on about over there. And frankly, I don't really care. I have a show. It's fun. I enjoy doing it. I basically already do it. We just now do it in a more organized way, and we record it and market it, And I'm not thinking about others. I'm thinking about, do I have fun doing this? Is it gaining traction? And I'm looking at what I'm doing. And I would just encourage other people to just do the same. Just do what you want to do. Make sure you apply objectivist principles and get the message out there, but do what you want to do. That's my message.
If we have more objectivists doing what they wanted, what they thought they should, rather than looking to the central authority for their thoughts, then maybe we wouldn't be in the mess we're in with.
Yeah, exactly. ARI should have so long ago had a podcast. Like what I do with my show, like they should, and it should be produced, have got nice lighting, have a studio, and they should have been doing video podcasting long ago, long ago. And they didn't. So now, we're having to step in and we're having to do these sorts of things, and that's fine. And I'm having fun with it, and it's a really good time. But I'm just saying that, we can't necessarily just rely on ARI to save the world.
Maybe we shouldn't. You should be careful what you wish for, because if they did start a podcast, maybe people would go to it instead of coming to guys like you and I.
Yeah, true, fair point.
So.
The possibilities for producing content and getting it out there are limitless. You can, you can be an objectivist and do video game reviews, applying objectivist principles to the understandings of video games. That can be your show. Just anything, literally anything. Movie reviews, video game reviews, music reviews. You could do a show about music, where you talk about the principles of music and things like this. People say, man, where did you come up with all this? Well, objectivism, blah, blah, blah. You talk about it, the possibilities are just limitless. And we need more content, and we need more content providers as well. And this is how we hash out the good ideas, the right ideas from the bad ideas. is by having these conversations and not being assholes to each other in the process either, you know? So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts anyway.
All right. Yeah, we're definitely having this conversation with Rucka about the alt-right and stuff, and it doesn't need to stop the conversation here just because we don't all agree on what the alt-right means. And clearly, the alt-right's a crazy term. If black people are on it too, but you know, as we've said, the black people maybe don't belong on the alt-right. So yeah, not to rehash. It's our job to jump in here and do something about this part of the culture. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what else? Did we cover everything? What else shall we?
Yeah, and since you brought up Rucka explicitly, I just want to say, like, you know, because I'm sure he said he was going to consume your content, continue consuming it. So I just want to throw this out there. I like Rucka. I think Rucka does good stuff. I watch all of his content. I like him. I think he's probably a pretty cool dude in real life. You know, I don't have any problems with him. I was just trying to get the message out there a little bit, like maybe tone it down a bit. You know, go after the content itself, not the person. You know, that would be my only wish, I guess you could put it.
Rucka's kind of my example of this cultural objectivism being out there. You know, he's making these songs. I listen to these songs. I go, like there's this one line: you base your life on the beliefs of dead people because they must have known something that we don't, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're old and dead, they knew something we don't, right? That's an excellent thought, and I'm watching these things. I'm going, this guy's got to be an objectivist or something, and then eventually I find out that he is. He's an objectivist.
Yeah.
And so that's an example where at the end of his video, he doesn't say, if you like the content, read Opar. You know,
Yeah.
He just does his video and says what he says for him saying it. He doesn't reference or source. It's just his ideas and what he believes.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's an example of where, oh boy, I've got some lawnmowers attacking here.
Oh, it's all good. I can still hear you.
All right. Yes, and no, I'm not upset with Rucka, and I've taken a lot of heat in the past, and some people who used to give me, let me just close the window, it's getting out of control here.
Yeah, sure, man.
Some people have given me heat in the past for this or that views have now come over to my side. So maybe Rucka will come over to my side. It seems our only disagreement is should we practice objectivism or just use it to understand everything. So.
I heard something about that and something difference between practicing and understanding. And I don't remember exactly what was said in that context.
Yeah, but well, all right. Should we wrap up here? Or we?
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah.
We'll throw this out to the audience, and if you want to come on and speak again, this was fun. We could talk about additional topics or whatever, and.
Yeah, sure. Anytime I get a handful of topics cobbled together that really require the lens of objectivism to be applied, I'll hit you up and we can do something again.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot, Luke. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
See you later, Brandon.
See you later.